Hey everyone, how's it going? Five Finger Shuffle back here with another video. And today what we are doing is we are going over the newly released balance patch notes. So I'm sure most of you know by now there's already been a bunch of notes that, well, not a bunch of notes, but a bunch of rumors that a lot of units are going to be nerfed, a lot of units are going to be buffed. There's going to be a lot of changes to the summon system. We have like the first wave of what's going to happen. So basically what they've done is they've said we're going to inform you about future balance changes which are scheduled for August 8th. So these updates that are coming on August 8th, which is 2 weeks from now. So that'll be obviously not this patch which just happened earlier today, but 2 patches from now. So give you plenty of time to get ready for it. Also, they're going to inform us about changes to the summon system, certain Moonlight hero changes, and memory imprint improvement and skill renewals by the end of July. So that's within the next week. We will find out that information. But for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring these units up one at a time, and we're going to go through their skills, and I will let you know how they've been buffed or changed. I've gone through most of them, but there might be nerfs. I don't think so. I think these are all buffs. So the first unit up is a Lulu. So I know a lot of people pulled for Lulu and they're like, well, I already have Dizzy, so I really have no reason for Lulu. This buff might actually make her relevant now. So her first skill, Wild Wave, attacks with intense elemental force, damage dealt increases proportional to the amount of enemies' health lost. Now this first skill is going to do all the exact same stuff, except there's also going to be a 50% chance to decrease defense for 2 turns. So adding a 2-turn defense break is going to make her, I think, a lot more viable. It is single target, but it means that if she does miss her defense break on Wave of Vengeance, then it's not that big of a deal. So currently this Wave of Vengeance is 75% once it's skilled up. It starts at 50, goes up to 75. This is now going to be going up to 85, so they're going to add another 10% to her decreased defense. Another 10% chance to land her decreased defense on this skill. Also, her attack will increase every time this skill is used, and this will stack up to 3 times. So she's going to get an increased attack as well. She can already do decent damage, so being able to add, it's not really an attack buff, but a passive increase of attack to go along with an increased chance to defense break, I think it's a nice buff for Lulu. Next up, we're going to move over to Fire, and somebody who a lot of people just don't use because they don't like how he looks, and I don't blame them. For those of you that may end up recalling your ML ball and Sazan, maybe you'll be getting some of these guys back if you fed some of the Fire one into your Light one. So maybe you might want to consider building him now. Which one is it? Oops, Dark Cloud. Yeah, this one. So the first one is this second skill. The damage is going to be increased by 30%, which is really nice. Anytime you can get a free 30% damage on an AoE attack is going to be huge. And damage dealt proportional to debuffs. So it says dealing damage proportional to the number of debuffs inflicted on the enemy. So that damage, specifically the part dealt proportional debuffs, is going to be increased by 50%. So that is a huge, 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 huge damage buff to his second skill. And especially if he's doing that second skill after this skill, which was already a 5-turn, if once skilled up was a 5-turn cooldown, and it's been adjusted. The skill is going to be the same, but it's now going to be only a 3-turn cooldown. So having a defense break and a speed break and a heal block for 2 turns on a 3-turn cooldown means it's going to be up all the time. So maybe we'll start seeing him more often. Should be interesting. But a huge buff for him as well. That's really, really big in my opinion. If you don't mind his character art, then you may want to build him. And the final element we haven't talked about, there's lots of units still to go, but Ludwig. Little Ludwig. I've had him forever, and I've never built him, so let's take a look and see what's happening now. So the first one is Moonlight Blow, which is his second skill. Initially, attacks with light with a 50% chance to stun for 1 turn. When the enemy is defeated by this attack, the caster is granted invincibility for 1 turn. This is changing to granting invincibility to the caster for 1 turn. So now the condition on him having to kill somebody is removed. So automatically he's going to give himself invincibility if he uses this attack, which is really nice. You don't have to worry about him actually killing with it. And then this skill, instead of penetrating defense by 50% if the caster is invincible, it's going to still penetrate defense by 50% if he's invincible, but if he isn't invincible, it's going to penetrate defense by 20%. So the actual wording is penetrates defense by 20% plus an additional 30 if he's invincible. And then the rest of the skill is going to be the same. So it just gives him a little more viability. He doesn't need invincibility in order to make this work. Like if he happens to get stripped, he can still ignore defense by 20%, which is still going to be big damage, which is nice. Maybe you'll be able to use him on auto now as well instead of only arena, because he'll always ignore defense. But yeah, and he always gives himself invincibility as well. So really, really nice there. Up next, back to fire, and one of the more popular units actually. I know a lot of people that really like this girl, Tenebria. I think she's already really, really good, but she is getting a buff. Dark Explosion currently has a 25 upgraded to 35% chance to sleep on the skill 1, and that's going to be increased to a 50% chance to sleep. So half the time now, I know I used to attack teams, a couple of teams with Tenebria in them. I used to use my Coli against them, and she would AoE silence the entire team. So I would, for example, kill the Dizzy, put up AoE silence on everybody. Then Tenebria would sleep my Coli, and then which boosts her own attack bar, and then she AoE'd into me and wiped my whole team. So it was supposed to be only a 25 upgrade to 35% chance. That's now a 50% chance of happening. Thankfully, we don't see her on defense anymore. Also, the other thing they changed was Nightmare, which is her third skill. Used to be a 75% chance to defense break on a 5-turn cooldown. This is going to be increased now to an 85% chance to defense break on a 4-turn cooldown. I currently am using her on my A11 team, so just taking that AoE and making it a 4-turn cooldown instead of a 5-turn is really nice. Also increasing the chance to defense break, also very nice. So I'm happy with that. It's not as big as some of the other buffs, but I think she was already really strong, so making her stronger is a nice little boost there. Next up, we're actually going to move to a 4-star. I am not even 100% sure he's nature. Yes, he is. Okay. Little Leo. Alright, so Leo getting a buff. Pay attention. Sorry, Fox Hunt. Now, I'm going to speculate on this. I'll post the link of all these changes in the description down below, but I think the wording on one of them is wrong. This one I think is fine. Fox Hunt attacks with a slingshot, 100% chance to decrease defense for 2 turns, and a 30% chance to use Sparrow Dive, which is the skill 1. This is now going to be a 50% chance to use Sparrow Dive. Also, the damage is going to be increased by 14%. So damage buff and increased chance to use Sparrow Dive, which is really nice. This is the one that I'm not sure about. So currently, Raku flies in the enemies like a bullet, attacks all of them, decreasing speed for 2 turns, 50% chance to stun. So that's really strong. AoE speed break and 50% chance to stun. They're buffing it to 75% chance to stun for 2 turn, quote unquote, on a 5-turn cooldown instead of a 4-turn. Sorry, let me rephrase that. On a 4-turn instead of 5-turn cooldown, You can see this says 6, gets reduced to 5. Now, I feel like the 2-turn stun is a typo, because down below it says the probability of triggering Sparrow Dive has been increased after using the skill for Fox Hunt. Additionally, the skill Flying Raku had its probability to inflict stun increased. This combined with a lower cooldown should allow him to make more threatening attacks. There was no mention of a 2-turn stun instead of 1-turn stun. If that's a 2-turn stun, that is enormous. Like, having a 75% chance to have a 2-turn stun. So pay attention to this guy when he comes out, or if they edit it. Because currently it does say 2-turn stun, and we don't have any AoE 2-turn stun in the game. That could be totally debilitating and potentially game-breaking if that's true. But we'll have to see. That would essentially make ML era obsolete, I think, if they did that. But we'll have to see what happens. One of the main reasons why I think that they won't do that is because one of the units that they've been targeting to balance has been ML era, despite the fact that I don't think she needs it. But if they nerfed her and then were buffing him to be stronger than she ever was, that doesn't make any sense. So up next is Roman. Poor Roman gets no play. But let's see what he does here. Gravitation, his second skill. Attacks all enemies with a magic circle with 50% chance to decrease combat readiness by 20% twice. This is now going to be by 20% 4 times. So this is going to be an 80%, well, potentially an 80% attack bar reduction instead of a 40% attack bar reduction, which is really nice. Most people don't use him for his second skill, though. Most people use him for this third skill, which currently shoots a powerful gravity sphere at all enemies, dispelling all buffs and increasing combat readiness of the caster by 50%. Damage dealt increases, and the enemy is inflicted with 2 poisons for 2 turns when the enemy is buffed. Phew. Now, damage dealt increases. The enemy is inflicted with 2 poison for 2 turns, and the caster's combat readiness increases by an additional 30% when the enemy is buffed. So basically they added a self-combat readiness increase to it. I guess that helps him take another turn sooner. Does that make him more viable? I don't think so. I mean, it is a nice buff for him if you're already using him, but don't think I would build him based on the buff. I think he's not bad. If you don't have another strip, I would use him, but I wouldn't build him just purely based on the increase from before to after. Yeah. Alright, so next up, one of our specialty change heroes. I was just talking about this guy on stream. Rickris. Alright, so Rickris and Captain Rickris got a buff. This one might be a little confusing. I haven't read this yet. Quick Pierce is the first skill. Attacks with the spear with a 50% chance to decrease defense for 2 turns. Now, it not only does that, but also effect chance increases by 25% when the caster is granted increased speed. So if he's got a speed buff, which he can give to himself, so as long as he's got this speed buff, he's got a 75% chance to decrease defense instead of a 50% chance. So that's kind of nice. Let's switch over to Captain Rickris. Captain Rickris gets the same thing on a skill 1, so that has to be skilled up, obviously, but if you do it, that'll be 75% chance to defense break with skill 1. Supreme Spear. Attacks with the spear with a 50% chance to decrease whoops, wrong skill. Attacks all enemies with hard trained spear art with a 75% chance to dispel a buff from the target before having a 75% chance to stun an enemy with the highest combat readiness regardless of skill miss. Recovers caster's health after attack. Amount recovered is proportional to the caster's attack. Now, the buffs are, the skill stays the same, but the healing is going to be increased by 100%. So you're going to have double the heal. I have never built him, so I don't know what his heal was like in the first place, but it's twice as strong as it was. And the damage dealt is going to be increased by 41%. Again, I don't know what kind of damage he was dealing, but that's a nice buff for Captain Icarus. Also, they've changed his skill tree a little bit. We can't look at it from here, but they changed his defense increases by 10% to defense increases by 15%, and health increases by 10% to health increases by 20%. So he's going to be tankier, he's going to defense break more often, and he's going to do more damage. So nice buff for Captain Icarus if you've done his specialty change. Who's up next? Next up is somebody else we were just talking about, which is really strange. I swear they've been listening to the streams. We were just talking about Raz. Not the fact that he was going to get buffed. I said he probably should get a buff, especially since he's a free unit. But I didn't actually expect them to buff him. That being said, they actually have. So, Sword of the Air is his ultimate. Strongly attacks all enemies with a Sword Storm, recovering health proportional to damage dealt, and increasing defense of the caster for 2 turns. Damage dealt increases proportional to the caster's max HP. Is now going to be strongly attacks all enemies with a Sword Storm, recovering health, and increasing defense of the caster for 2 turns. So proportional to damage is no longer there, which means you can just build him as a tank and he will recover health, which means his heal is basically increased, is what that means. Damage dealt and amount of recovery increases proportional to the caster's max health. So now you just want to build him with pure HP, he'll heal more, and he'll do more damage. And the basic version of the skill will now have the same effect as the Awakened version. So that's good to know. Yeah. And then the rest of the notes is just explaining that. And then down at the very bottom, I'm going to read this to you guys. Adjustment details for the following PvP heroes will be released on July 31st, which is the next date that patches are expected. It also says that they are looking for feedback from people. Basically, what that means is they don't want people to rage on them. They're basically asking you not to freak out when your MLNet 5 gets nerfed, or if you don't agree with what they're going to change. So, these are heroes that they're expecting to buff. First up is Basar. I kind of agree with that. I wouldn't mind if Basar got a buff. I don't have him, but I can see how he would need a buff. Especially compared to the rest of the meta, I feel like he's kind of fallen behind. Next up is Yufine. I don't know if she needs a buff. I think she's already really good, but I would definitely take it. Maybe she's fallen behind a little bit, but she does have 2 strips. 2 strips, a stun, a defense break. I think she's really good. But she'll definitely, with a buff, she'll become very, very viable no matter what the buff is. Another wind character is Lilibet, who I also think is really good. Her skill 3 extinction is really strong. I'm guessing they're going to do something to the other skills, either that or make extinction stronger or reduce the cooldown. It does 4 turns is a really long cooldown just because of her kit. Like she's I mean, my thoughts on her. She's a nat 5 with 3 single target skills. I love her skill 3. It hits so hard, and she's super cute. But if she doesn't kill with her skill 3, then she's done. Like that's pretty much it, right? Because you're never going to get around to that skill 3 again unless you're using Izaria before that unit kills you. Cough, cough, ML Vildred. What I would like to see happen is the damage increased on her first skill by just a little bit, and then the skill 2 taken away and turned into a passive, basically saying that what happens with skill 3 and extinction is with all skills. So I don't know if that's going to happen, but that's what I would like to see happen is no matter what skill she uses, if she kills with it, it's considered extinction. They can't be revived. That at least makes her skill 1 viable, and nobody cares about her skill 2. So I think that would be ideal. I know there's another game I've played that had the same issue. They had a Nat 5 that had this extinction skill, and then they came out with a 4-star who had a passive that had extinction. And it was like, well, why is the 4-star stronger than the 5-star? So I think it'd be great to have both of her skills do extinction. Even though the skill 1 might not do as much damage, that's fine. Just having the ability to contribute toward her role would be really nice. And the final one on the buffs expected list is somebody who was on the buffs expected list last time, and they ended up taking her off last minute because of all the complaints, and that was Assassin Coli. They wanted to make it so that her skill 3 silenced whether she killed or not. It was whether or not she stunned. So, or was it? I can't remember, but I think that's what it was. Anyway, they took it back because people were complaining that it was actually a nerf instead of a buff. And I'm kind of happy they took it back. It means they're listening to the community. And hopefully whatever they decide to do to her this time is good, because she's one of my plus 15 units. So I would be happy about that. Next up is the part that nobody wants to hear about, and that is nerfs expected. So straight over to the ML Nat 5 section. These are there's 4 units here. 3 of them are light, 1 of them is dark. You know what? Let's start with the big one, Arbiter Vildred. Arbiter Vildred is scheduled for a nerf. I'm sure everybody knew that already. I'm sure if you had Arbiter Vildred, you knew that already. I'm sure if you read the patch notes when they said he was getting buffed, you knew he was going to get a nerf, because I sure as hell did, and I've been talking about it since the first whisper of his buff came out. I don't know why they put it out like that, but at least they realized that he's overpowered and kind of breaking the game right now. Everybody who was never even in Champion before is suddenly like pushing for Legend just because they have him. So it's really nice that he's going to get fixed. I don't know what they're going to do. Hopefully they don't nerf him to the ground. I don't have him. But I was saying today, I was like, what happens if you summon this guy today? Like, would you be excited? And the answer is no, because you know he's going to get nerfed, right? But hopefully they make him balanced. I don't want him to nerf him to the ground. I want him to be good. But make him balanced along with the others that are on this list. Because nerfing anybody to the ground, I'm not a big fan of nerfs to begin with. I don't think he's... The thing is, I don't think he's overly strong by himself. But when you start putting him with Fallen Cecilia and C. Armin, that's when he becomes broken, because you can't kill him. Especially when there's only one unit in Lilibet that really counters him. So, anyway, that is the dark unit. On to the light units. I'm sure you guys know who they are. Leading off with Sage Ball. I feel like Sage Ball, because ever since the Vildred thing, people have kind of forgotten about how OP he is. But again, he's another one that by himself isn't a big deal, but in combination with other units, he's really, really scary. If it was me, my personal suggestion, I think they should just change him. I don't even think he needs a big nerf. I think this is what I would do, is I would increase the cooldown of this. Because 3-turn cooldown on this is ridiculous. The fact that he can just keep doing this skill over and over and over again is insane. It's way too often to have an AoE strip sleep. Because there's nothing you can do about it unless you kill him. Or proc his skill 2. So what I would do is I would either make this 4 or even a 5-turn cooldown. Like, let him keep the same skill. Let him do it on skill 1. I think that's fine. But 3-turn cooldown is just too much. It's too much to handle. And in exchange for that, I would actually make this do more damage. The fact that he can't, like, people proc this skill intentionally to counter him is kind of funny. Like, you could do it maybe because, like, early on, but say you're fighting him and you're fighting a Vildred. Currently, you would just BBK into it, and even if he survives, you don't care, because he's going to come back and not kill anybody. But having this skill be a bit of a threat would be a nice change to counter the 2-turn increased cooldown on this skill. I don't know if they're going to do that, but I thought it was a good idea. Let me know down in the comment section below if you agree. I don't know if it would be good or not, but I feel like that kind of makes sense. And next up on the list is ML Era. And that one kind of surprises me because I really think that she's not that strong. Like, she's terrible on defense anywhere. I auto attack into defenses with her. And on offense, currently anyway, there's really nowhere even to use her. Like, you can't use her in offense anywhere. So she's good in Guild War because of the CC, but I don't know. I do have her, and I love her, but honestly, I never use her anymore. The only place I use her is in Raid, because she camps really well. I don't use her. I very rarely use her in Arena, and the only reason I use her is because she's one of my few mages that I can put Ancient Book on, so that I can burn into my Assassin Coli. So, that being said, I still love her, and I don't plan on recalling her, but we'll see what happens. She is one of my favorite units, so I kind of hope that I don't have to worry about that. And finally is ML Armin. There she is. Crimson Armin. Everybody knew this was an issue. Poor Crimson Armin is in every single arena defense in the top 1,000 people in arena right now, minus a few people. So she's somebody that something has to change because they don't want her in every single defense. The problem is if you take her out, then all of a sudden you can just nuke every single defense too. So that's why I think this update is taking so long, is because there's a lot of balancing that needs to go on in order to fix something like this. Like, she's a staple in the meta, and she's the reason why you just don't go in and nuke everything in arena. If you completely nerfed her to the ground, it would just be Aureus, and Aureus is stopping nobody in high-level arena from nuking. So we'll see what happens. I assume this is going to push everybody back to like a super speed meta relatively quickly. But yeah, that is it for all the notes. Keep in mind that the ones at the end were just my personal opinion. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Hopefully it helped you guys out. I will post, don't forget that I post the balance notes in the description, so you can check them out for yourself if you want to. Otherwise, good luck, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see y'all next time. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and have a great day. Bye for now.